This is where my background is actually really helpful. As a chemical engineer, I know a thing or two about chemicals, and I went ahead and I did a little bit of extra research on methyl bromide, the specific pesticide that is used to treat pallets. And I found a few things that might just alleviate your concerns. At least they did for me. Pallets are like a dream come true for the DIYer and the crafter. But there's a lot of information going around today that pallets are unsafe to use for applications like furniture or anything that would touch food. Today we're gonna get to the bottom of that so you can understand the risks and make a decision for yourself. I just barely picked up a bunch of pallets because I'm gonna be using them for some projects here in the near future. One in particular, I'm gonna be building an outdoor shed for a small shed, right? For my lawnmower and just kind of like yard tools. And I'm gonna be able to do it basically entirely out of pallet wood. The reason this is amazing for the DIYer and the crafter alike is because wood and other materials are very expensive today. And it's getting very difficult to be able to do real projects. But pallets we can often come by either really cheap or oftentimes free. In the case of all these, I got a whole stack here that's 6 feet tall. They were all free. I just had to go pick them up. So they're really cheap, plentiful. The wood's really durable. That makes them perfect for a lot of projects like outdoor furniture, planter boxes, and shelving. But there's something going on here that's more than meets the eye that we need to address. For a lot of years, and in some cases, maybe even now, pallets were treated with methyl bromide. That was used as a pesticide to kill any little critters, any bugs that might be living in the wood, which is important so that they don't get eaten out from the inside and fall apart. Now, other pallets are heat treated. And you can tell by the stamp that's on the side of the pallets, like this one here. All of the pallets here that I can get to the stamp, I was able to look at, and every single one of them shows that they're heat treated. So what's the deal with the methyl bromide? Methyl bromide, again, like I said, is a pesticide, but it's also one that is somewhat toxic to humans. And that's not a good thing to be eating off of, or to maybe be sitting on, or have around your family. But other pallets use heat treatment. The HT on the stamp tells you heat treated. If you see an MB, you know it was treated with methyl bromide. But the HT means that it was heat treated. And so it used heat to kill all the bugs inside instead of a pesticide, which, as you can imagine, is probably better for your health as well as for the environment. Methyl bromide is considered a greenhouse gas, and so not great for the environment either. There's another marking you might see sometimes on pallets, and that is a DB. That means debarked. It means it's untreated. And those are less regulated, so it's hard to know exactly what was done with those, but they at least weren't treated with methyl bromide, at least not when they were made. And that's the crux of the issue here with using pallets at all. Some people will tell you to never, ever, ever use pallets for these kinds of projects because there's a good chance that even if they're heat treated, they may have been exposed to methyl bromide anyway. And that's because it's not uncommon at docks, anywhere really where pallets are loaded and unloaded, it's not uncommon for them to be treated again for any pests. And that's because whether they're heat treated or treated with methyl bromide or other pesticides, that treatment is for that moment. Once the treatment is done, it doesn't stay behind and it doesn't continue to treat the wood on an ongoing basis. And so if that wood picked up any pests along the way, they'll treat it again just to be safe. And because of that, even if your pallet has an HT stamp on the side, there's a good chance, or at least a chance, that it may have been exposed to methyl bromide. This is where my background is actually really helpful. As a chemical engineer, I know a thing or two about chemicals, and I went ahead and I did a little bit of extra research on methyl bromide, the specific pesticide that is used to treat pallets. And I found a few things that might just alleviate your concerns. At least they did for me. The first is that methyl bromide is actually being used less and less anyway. And so the chances of a pallet that's not that old having been exposed to methyl bromide is significantly less today than it was several years ago. It's used less today because of its toxicity and because it's classified as a greenhouse gas. And so we're already seeing it used substantially less. But even if the risk is really, really low, you might not want to build furniture that your children might be exposed to if it could have methyl bromide on it, right? Well, that leads me to the next part. When I did my research, I found that methyl bromide is a very, very volatile substance. It's a gas. Volatile just means that it wants to be in its gas state. We think of volatility and we think, oh, that means it could easily explode. Well, that's because a lot of volatile substances that we're used to, like gasoline, are also very flammable or explosive. But methyl bromide is actually not a flammable gas, but it is very volatile. It wants to be in the gas state. And so when we spray it onto things, we actually have to cover those things in order to have the methyl bromide stay long enough to kill the bugs. So when we treat things with methyl bromide, we'll actually cover it with a tarp or do it in an enclosed space like inside of a shipping container. Once then the pallet is exposed to the atmosphere, the air, that methyl bromide evaporates very, very quickly. And almost none, maybe even none of the methyl bromide that was sprayed on it remains behind. That means that even if your pallets were treated with methyl bromide, there's a really good chance that there's not any left on the wood. But it's possible that trace amounts do remain behind on the surface of the wood. So what then? First of all, if the pallets that you have been outdoors, exposed to the air for a substantial period of time, like I've got them here in my yard, even a few months from now, I'm gonna be able to feel really, really confident that any amount of methyl bromide that's left is gonna be insubstantial and unable to even cause any sort of damage to me. Next, I do want to check the stamps, and I am going to prefer heat-treated pallets because those didn't get that initial treatment of methyl bromide and are less likely to have ever been treated with methyl bromide, and so heat-treated pallets are just more likely on average to be safe. So that helps lower my risk. Next, I'm going to look for pallets that aren't as old, right? Because those pallets, first of all, the wood's going to be in better shape typically, but two, because methyl bromide's being used less frequently than it used to be, it's less likely that newer pallets will have ever been treated with methyl bromide. But also, they're likely to have been through fewer ports and fewer places where methyl bromide may still have been used, even up to now, in the treatment of these pallets. And the last thing I'm gonna do to help protect myself and lower my risk is when I'm working with pallet wood, I'm gonna go ahead and make sure that I'm wearing gloves and that I'm wearing a face mask. It's good practice anyway, and actually glasses as well. It's good practice anyway because breathing in sawdust isn't great for your lungs. It's also not fun to get in your eyes. But also because the real danger that methyl bromide poses is when you breathe it in. And so breathing it in, if there's traces amounts of it left on the surface of the wood, you're more likely to breathe it in when you're sanding or when you're cutting that wood. So just put on a face mask or a respirator and put on some gloves and some glasses, and your risk from methyl bromide is gonna essentially be zero. But if you're just like a zero risk tolerance kind of a person and you choose to just go buy new wood and use that instead, that's your choice, and I fully support you in that. If you want to be extra safe with pallets, there's a couple more things that you should consider. One, don't burn pallet wood, at least not in a situation where people are going to be around. So don't use it for like a bonfire or a backyard fire or a campfire or anything like that, because if there is methyl bromide in the wood, it's going to also be in the smoke, which is going to make the smoke more toxic than it already is, because smoke is already not great for us to be breathing in. Next, if you are going to be using pallet wood for projects where people are going to be coming in close contact with it, then having it be outdoor projects is probably a little bit better. So outdoor furniture may be better than indoor furniture. I think that's maybe overkill, but that's your choice. Honestly, I suspect that you probably stand as much risk from the pallet wood having been exposed to other toxic substances or chemicals just from the fact that it's a pallet and it had things shipped on top of it. And so those are the things that I may be even more concerned about than the methyl bromide. If your pallets look really good and clean, if the wood looks like it's not been stained by substances spilling on it, that sort of stuff, I think you're probably gonna be generally pretty safe. But risk is one of those things where we each have our own tolerance for the risk, and that's why I wanted to educate you today on what the risks are with pallets, so that when you hear people say, oh, don't use pallets, they're unsafe because of the pesticides they're treated with, you can understand what those risks really are. And just know that me, with my background as a chemical engineer, I think pallet wood is perfectly fine to use in all sorts of projects, but I still may choose not to eat off of it, mostly though not because of the methyl bromide, but because of anything else that pallet wood may have been exposed to. So now my question for you is, have you ever used pallet wood for any projects? And if so, what do you think about this? Have you ever considered using it? And if so, what do you think about this? I'm also curious what kind of cool projects you've made out of pallet wood. Let me know in the comments below. We'll see you all next time here on Fixter.